Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the ChromaticKnits podcast. My name is Michelle, and this is my place on the internet where I talk about all of my yarny adventures. You can find me on Instagram as chromatic_knits, and you can find me on Ravelry as ChromaticKnits. Welcome back. If you're returning, welcome if you're new. I'm so glad to have you here. Today, we're going to be talking about all about needles. So feel free to grab your own knitting, your crochet, or laundry, whatever it is that you're working on, or maybe just a nice cup of tea, and I would love to get into it with you. Please also feel free to subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, to like this video. It really helps me out, and I really appreciate it. And I always love hearing from you down in the comments below. All right, now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, let's talk about needles. So, knitting needles specifically come in all shapes and sizes, and we're going to talk about some of my favorite brands and my favorite kinds and the different types of needles that are available. So, first of all, let's talk about the different types of needles. So, first of all, there are straight needles, which I'll put a picture in here. Straight needles are the needles that everyone thinks about when they think about like movie knitting or on a TV show. They're just the sticks and the yarn just knitting in the flat. So just knitting like a just like a scarf or um, just like a piece of material, a flat piece of material. Um, and some people use straight needles. They use really big ones, really small ones. They come in all different sizes, and some people use them with a pouch on their hip, and they do that for like speed knitting, especially people who have larger projects. It helps them kind of clear up one of their hands so that they can knit faster. I've never tried it, but I've seen people that do, and there's an Instagrammer called Vandecamp Designs. If you've ever seen him, he uses the pouch on occasion, and he always uses straight needles. So you can check him out there and kind of see how that looks. I'll try to link him down below. And then there are circular needles, which look like, get a good pair. They look like this. So it's two needles connected by a cord. So you can stretch the needles out and the cord will go in between them. And this you can knit things in the round, which is why it's called the circular needle, because you can knit circular objects. You can knit like a sock or any kind of tube. You can also knit flat, so you can also just knit anything that a pair of straight needles can knit on these as well, which is why I choose to use circular needles the most. And you can also extend the cord so that in case you're knitting something like a blanket or a large shawl, you can just extend the cord or get a larger cord. In case you hear random noises, that noise was Nugget. And I also have Aria up here as well. So Aria just jumped up as soon as she saw Nugget. Oh, here she goes. Yep. They don't fight or chase each other. They just play. And she's just like, I want to play with you. I'm gonna move this down just a little bit. It keeps bumping my chin. Okay. So there's those needles, and then there are double pointed needles, which I'll put a picture in. I couldn't find mine for some reason. I'll have to keep looking. They've got to be somewhere. But double pointed needles you can use for things like I use them for decreases on a hat. You can also use them for any kind of tube as well. You could also knit in the flat with them if you wanted to, but your needles might fall off the end because there's nothing to really stop them since there's a needle on both ends and not like a stopper. Like it's like straight needles. Um, but yeah, so some people use them for like mitered squares. Some people like to use double points for socks or anything that's tubular as well. Today we'll mainly be talking about how and why you'd use different tips of needles. But those are basically the main three forms of needles that we use in knitting, other than like a darning needle to sew in our ends. But as far as knitting needles go, I have a few different brands here, some of the more popular brands. and some that you may not have heard of before. So we're going to talk about kind of the benefits and the disadvantages of using the different brands. So I do like to switch my needles up. I don't like using the same brand of needles. I do have a go-to brand that I like to go with, but I do have some other needles as well that I really like using too. So I want to definitely talk about those. So there are different things to take into account when you're picking a pair of needles. So one of the things is the tip of the needles. Are the tips going to be sharp enough, or are they going to be too sharp for what you're trying to do? So when you're doing something like lace that's going to be more intricate and with a smaller yarn, you're going to want a sharper needle because then it'll pick it up easier than a blunter needle. This needle, for example, is moderately sharp. It's not super blunt, but it's flat on the top, and it's going to be able to pick up stitches in it's going to be able to pick up stitches easily, but it's not going to stab you every time that you use it. You probably would be able to stab through if you're a pusher. You'd be able to stab through your finger eventually, but it's going to take a while with these needles. These are the should say what they are. Jimmy's Smart Sticks. You get these from Jimmy Bean's Wool. Um, they are a nice needle, and then they also have a cord. So the big gimmick with these is that the cord is also a measuring tape. So if you look at the cord, do you see there's like silver bits and there's like random silver lines on the cord? So that's where it indicates where the inch is. And the same on the stick. So this is an inch. So that you can measure your gauge or you can measure your width or whatever you're doing. So that you don't have to have both a measuring tape and needles with you. You can do both at the same time. So that's kind of the gimmick with these. And they are really nice. They are, you know, really good for what they are. They're good quality. And I really do like using them. I don't have a lot of them. This is the only one that I have because I wanted to try them out first before I bought like a whole set or something. Um, but I really did like using them and would recommend them if you're looking for like a basic needle. They are a little pricey for what they are. I mean, if you have a measuring tape and a pair of needles, you're fine. I've never used the measuring part of it because I had stuff on the needles that was blocking the measuring tape. Um, so I'm just not sure, 100% sure how the measuring tape is supposed to work, but this is available. So that's one type of needle. Let me grab one that might be a little bit more. I have one here. Let's talk about this one. So Susan Bates is a brand that you'd see all over the place in like Michaels and Joann Fabrics. These are the ones that everybody starts out on, pretty much everybody. If you've never, especially those who have never like gotten into knitting or didn't know anybody who was into knitting before they started knitting. So I started out using these needles when I was in college, when I first started to learn how to knit, and they were good for what they are. They'll work. They do so, and needles come in different materials as well. So this is like an aluminum. It's really light, kind of flimsy, and it will bend, at least in my experience. These bend, especially if you have a tight grip or you're a tight knitter. I have bent these types of needles before, and the cord is like super, like, the cord will stay curled up. So it's some cords you can find they'll straighten out right away. These ones, not so much. So these ones you have to do the trick where you put them in a bowl or like a pan of hot, like boiling hot water, and then you straighten it out because if they've been in the bag, even if it's just a short period of time, they'll tend to keep that curl in there, and it can be difficult to get them to uncurl, and it gets really kind of annoying because you're constantly fighting your needles to be in the shape that you want them to be, which is straight. So, but these are a good price point, and they're pretty convenient that you can just go to the store and get them instead of having to order them online or something if you don't have a local yarn store. So that is my opinion on those. And then there's also the difference between a fixed needle and a interchangeable needle. So a fixed needle means that these needles are attached to this cord. They are stuck together. These are not. So obviously the needles are by themselves. See, they're not attached to the bottom to anything. And there's a cord that you can attach here to any of these needles. So you can attach the different cord lengths to the different needles in order to get your different projects. Obviously, some of these needles are out in project bags somewhere. But interchangeable sets tend to be cheaper than buying the non-interchangeable, because these ones you can't change the cord. So you'd have to buy every single size of needle and every single length cord in order to have what an interchangeable set has. So ultimately, you're going to end up spending less money with an interchangeable set. However, you may end up spending more money because you end up buying more cords. If you have a lot of projects that are on, like, you doing magic loop a lot, or you're doing like 40-inch cables or 32-inch cables, depending on who you talk to, 36-inch cables, depending on the brand as well. Different lengths for different brands are available. So you might end up buying extra cables just so that you can use multiple needles at the same time. So kind of the balance between these different options. These both are Knit Picks needles. I would recommend Knit Picks needles. I really do like them. There is a little bit of a hitch in the cord. So right where the cord meets the needle, it does hitch a little bit on their fixed circulars and a little bit on their interchangeables. But generally, it's a pretty smooth needle, and it's at a really good price point. So if you're looking for a good starter set, Knit Picks is a really good option. They do have sales occasionally on tools. So they just had a sale a few weeks ago for like 30% off tools. So I always keep my eye out for those, and that's when I got these, was when they were on sale. So you can always check that out. They usually have it in their summer sale as well over at Knit Picks. And then there are 9-inch circular needles, which look like this. So usually one of the needles is longer than the other one. So see how this one is shorter than this one? Just to make it a little bit longer and a little bit easier to hold and move your needles around. Nugget. He's being a heathen. You're a good boy, though. You just make bad life choices sometimes. Yeah. Hi, bud. Anyway, so yeah. So 9-inch circulars. So a lot of these like became really popular, I feel like, during the pandemic era. Like people were really into 9-inch circulars, and it was a new thing that people started using for like socks. They're using for socks, like shirt sleeves, those types of things. I've tried to use them and my hands cramp so bad, like I can't even explain. My hand, because they're just so like fiddly, and like your hands are so close together, and like the needles are so tiny, like I just can't. Like my hands just cramp, and it's just not a fun experience for me. Some people love them and try them and love them, and some people are not on team 9-inch circular. I personally am not, but that doesn't mean that I wouldn't say try them and see if you like them. You can find them in all different brands. These just happen to be ChromaticKnits. I also have some Addies as well somewhere on this couch. But anyway, you can find them in all different brands. There's Addies and Hayas and ChromaticKnits and all different brands available. Oh, here they are. There's the Addies. So would recommend these if you get a chance. But personally, they're just not for me. Um, as far as the Addies go, they're really solid needle. Really love the quality of these. The point is going to be a little bit pointier than those Knit Picks needles, and then the Jimmy Beans wool needles, but they're not quite like a stiletto tip, which we'll get there in just a second. Um, but I would really recommend Addies as well. They're a really solid needle and have been around for a long time. Um, and then a brand that we don't see a lot in the United States is Prim. These are their ergonomic needles. It just says that they're made out of like a synthetic material, so I'm not really 100% sure what they're made out of. It doesn't seem to be metal. It seems to be some kind of like polymer. I don't know. Anyway, so you'll notice one thing, they look kind of like a drumstick because they have this kind of curve right there on the tip. And they're just really nice to hold. Like when you're knitting, they're just really nice to hold. The ergonomic shape is very nice. I do really like knitting with them. They're super light. Um, they do catch just a tiny bit on the edge before they go up to the needle, but I mean, what needle doesn't? But would highly recommend. And like these have been curled up in there forever, and I just pulled them out and now they're flat. Like you don't have to fight with this cord at all. Love this cord. It's great. Would highly recommend. Um, if you haven't used Prim needles, I know like Arna and Carlos and some other YouTubers have talked about Prim needles before. Ellie over at Skein Knits has talked about them before, but you see them a lot in like Scandinavia, Scandinavian countries. Not sure where they're actually from though. It says made in Germany on the box. But I was able to find these like on Amazon, I think, and I really like them. I do use them occasionally, so would recommend those. And then I have Knitter's Pride needles, which these are probably my second go-to needles. They're sharp enough that you can definitely pick up your stitches. You don't have to worry about them at all. But they're definitely blunt enough that they're not going to stab through your finger right away. It's going to take a little bit. So they're not stiletto tip, but they're not blunt either. They're nice and sharp needles, which I really like. And they're a really solid needle that comes with a really good cord. And they come at a really good price point as well. You can find these. I found these on eBay, I think, for like $50. eBay or Amazon, I can't remember. But you can find them all different places. And this has a full set in it. The only thing I don't like about it is that you have to like dig through the bag that they give you to find the matching two in here. Like they're the same color, so I mean it's easier to find, but like you have to dig through the whole bag just to find the right needles. So that's the one thing that I don't like about this setup. And we'll probably just get a bag. Just get a needle organizer, but I really do like these needles as well. Would highly recommend them. Next, let's talk about some sharp needles. So these are Hayahayas. If you've never seen the packaging before, this is what it looks like. These are Hayahaya sharps. So this is what I use for any kind of lace or any kind of intricate needlework. These are very sharp, which is why they have the name that they have. And they will definitely push through your finger in a second. Let's see if you can see that against that black. So it is pointy. These are the pointiest needles that I have. These definitely are great for knitting, knitting lace, knitting anything intricate. 100% always go for the Hayahayas. They are, again, one of my top favorite brands of needles. The cables are amazing. The needles are amazing. They're very good quality. And if you have any issues, their customer support is great as well. So would highly recommend them. And I've never had an issue with these needles ever. And then on to my favorite and go-to brand that I use most of the time is my Chow Goose. I have so many that I have 2 sets because I use them so much. Chow Goo needles are kind of the middle ground between the Knitter's Pride and the Hayahayas. They are sharp, but they're gonna take a second before they go through your finger. Put this in front of it. Let's see if you can see that on the red. So they're nice and pointy that you can pick up your stitches, but they're also blunt enough that you're not going to stab yourself too badly right away. They're very solid, but the magic in the Hayahayas is the cable. This cable is the smoothest cable I have ever used. It not only is smooth because like just letting um the the yarn just slide across it no matter what kind of yarn I'm using, but they also are the smoothest from the cord to the needle. There's no hitch at all. These are my absolute favorite. This red lace cord is the magic behind the Chow Goose, 110%. The needles are great, but the cords are what make it for sure. So would highly recommend these. Now I know what you're thinking. You're like, Michelle, but you've only shown us metal needles. Aren't there needles in other materials as well? Yes, of course there are. So there are metal needles, which is mainly what I use. You can also get bamboo needles, wood needles. I just tend to snap them, the wood ones, because they're going to be more delicate and more fragile than the metal will be. And they're much lighter. However, but if you have something that's going to be very slippery, then the wooden needles are going to be stickier. So they're less likely to just slide off of your needles, which is why a lot of people recommend that new beginners use wooden needles. So then that way you're not having your stitches slide all around and just fall off the needles when you're not paying attention. But I prefer metal needles, of course. Um, but let me know what needles you use. Do you use metal needles? Is there a certain brand that you love? Please tell me down below in the comments. I would love to hear from you and see what you're using or what you're loving, or if there's a brand that I haven't talked about today that you would recommend. I'm always up for it. So please feel free to let me know down below. Until next time, I hope you have a wonderful week and happy knitting, everybody. Bye.